Before the Moonstone Pack learned what Amara truly carried in her blood, they laughed at her. Before the Alpha understood why his dying wolf had chosen her, he rejected her. Before the elders exposed the secret they had buried for 15 years, they let the entire pack believe she was nothing more than a weak Omega who had forgotten her place. That night did not begin with war drums, nor with a warning from the moon, or a prophecy carved into stone, or a scream echoing through the forest. It began with one girl standing alone in the center of a hall built for power, surrounded by wolves who had already decided she was guilty. Amara stood before them with her hands trembling at her sides, her servant dress torn at the sleeve, her hair loose around her face, and her eyes lowered toward the polished stone floor. Around her, the grand hall of the Moonstone Pack rose like a monument to bloodline and rank. Tall pillars held up a ceiling painted with silver wolves. Blue banners hung from the walls, each one marked with the crest of Alpha Kael's ancestors. Candles burned along the steps leading to the throne platform, their flames steady and golden, as if even fire knew better than to disturb the judgment of wolves. The crowd saw an Omega, a servant. A girl with no title, no family standing beside her, no wolf strong enough to defend her name. None saw the ancient mark hidden beneath her shoulder, the silver light sleeping under her skin, nor noticed that every breath she took in that hall was pulling her closer to a truth the elders had spent years trying to erase. To them, Amara was easy to condemn. She had entered the Alpha's private healing chamber, so that alone was enough. No Omega was permitted near that room. No servant was allowed to cross its threshold. No one beneath warrior rank was even supposed to walk the east corridor after moonrise. The chamber belonged to Alpha Kael, ruler of Moonstone Pack, heir of a bloodline feared across the northern territories. A place guarded by law, silence, and the kind of fear that made even bold wolves lower their eyes. Amara had crossed that line. Some called it ambition, others called it disrespect, and some called it proof that even a quiet Omega could become dangerous when she began dreaming above her station. No one asked why she had gone in. No one cared to hear what she had heard outside the door. No one wanted to know why the Alpha's private chamber had smelled of bitter herbs, scorched silver, and blood. The truth was simple. And because it was simple, the pack refused to believe it. Amara had gone there because something inside that room had cried out, not a human cry, not the groan of an injured warrior. A wolf, a powerful wolf, a wolf in pain so deep that the sound had passed through the sealed door and entered her chest like a blade. She had been carrying fresh linen down the corridor when she heard it. At first, she thought she imagined the sound. Omegas learned early not to trust anything that could lead them into trouble. They learned to keep walking. They learned not to look through half-open doors. They learned not to ask why nobles returned from council meetings with blood on their sleeves. They learned that survival meant silence. Amara knew all of that. Still, she stopped. The cry came again, lower this time, almost swallowed by the walls. Her fingers tightened around the linen. Every instinct told her to leave. Every lesson beaten into her by rank and fear told her that a servant girl had no right to care about the pain of an Alpha. Then the sound changed. It was no longer only a cry, it became a pull, a strange tug beneath her ribs, as if an invisible thread had wrapped around her heart and drawn her toward the door. Amara touched the handle. It should have been locked. It opened. That was the first sign that the night had already chosen her. Inside the chamber, the air was cold. The healing lamps had been covered. Bowls of crushed herbs sat untouched on a carved wooden table. A black-stained cloth lay near the bed. Deep claw marks scarred the stone wall, not from an attack coming in, from something trapped inside trying to endure pain without being heard. And then Amara saw it. Not the Alpha himself, his wolf's suffering. The room carried it like a living wound. A powerful presence was trapped there, restless and wounded, fighting a sickness the pack was never meant to see. The official story said Alpha Kael was blessed by the moon, stronger than any ruler before him, untouched by weakness. The chamber told another story. Amara should have fled at once. Instead, she stepped forward, one step, then another. The moment her hand brushed the blood-stained cloth, heat shot through her palm. Silver light flashed beneath her skin for the shortest breath. She jerked away, terrified, hiding her hand against her chest. That was when the guards found her. They did not ask why she was there. They dragged her out. By the time she was forced into the grand hall, the story had already changed shape. A servant had been caught near the Alpha's bed. An Omega had tried to get close to power. A wolfless girl had dared to enter a sacred chamber. The accusation spread faster than truth ever could. Now she stood before the pack, alone. The wolves whispered around her. Some called her desperate, and others laughed as though her fear was entertainment placed before them for the evening. The chosen Luna, Isolde, stood near the council seats in a gown of pale silver, every inch of her arranged for admiration. Her smile was calm, yet her eyes were fixed on Amara with a sharpness that stripped away any pretend kindness. Isolde had spent months preparing to stand beside Kael. She had been chosen by the elders, praised by noble families, accepted by warriors who wanted strength beside strength. An Omega entering the Alpha's private chamber was an insult to her pride. A forbidden mate bond was a threat to her future. At that moment, Isolde did not yet know the second danger existed. She only saw the first. Elder Varric watched from the raised council platform. He was still quiet, and older than nearly every wolf in the room. His white hair fell neatly around a face marked by years of command. He did not laugh with the others. He did not speak in anger. He observed Amara with the calm attention of a man who had waited so long for a hidden thing to reveal itself that patience had become part of his bones. Near the side entrance, old healer Nara stood half in shadow. Her face had lost its color. Unlike the crowd, she did not look angry. She looked afraid. Not afraid for the Alpha, afraid for Amara. That was the second sign. The hall quieted before the doors opened. No announcement came. No guard called his name. No horn sounded. Alpha Kael entered and the entire room changed. Power moved with him in a way no title could explain. Wolves who had mocked Amara moments earlier straightened at once. Warriors lowered their heads. Servants pulled back toward the wall. Even Isolde's smile became measured, careful, rehearsed. Kael crossed the hall in black ceremonial clothing trimmed with silver. His shoulders were broad, his face was controlled, his eyes carried the cold focus of a ruler who spent years teaching himself never to reveal pain in public. Each step he took felt deliberate, as if he could command the stones beneath his boots to remain still. The pack saw its Alpha. Amara saw the man whose wolf had cried through a locked door. For one breath their eyes met. She expected anger. She expected disgust. She expected the same judgment she had seen on every face around her. Instead, something almost unreadable passed across his expression. Recognition came first, then shock. Then a hard wall dropped over his face before anyone else could notice. The elders waited. The pack waited. Amara waited. She wanted him to say he knew. She wanted him to tell them there had been pain in that chamber. She wanted one word from him that would turn the room away from cruelty and toward truth. Kael said nothing. Silence can be sharper than any accusation. Amara felt it cutting through her long before he reached her. She tried to speak. Her voice was small at first, then steadier as fear gave way to desperation. She told them she heard his wolf suffering. She told them she only entered because the sound felt wrong. She told them she did not go there to steal, seduce, spy, or shame the Alpha's house. The crowd rejected every word before it landed. A few wolves laughed again. A noblewoman near the front covered her mouth in amusement. One warrior muttered that Omegas were always full of excuses once caught. Amara's face burned. Kael came closer. The air between them seemed to tighten with every step. A strange pressure gathered in her chest. Her pulse quickened. The hidden mark beneath her shoulder warmed, then burned. She pressed her fingers into her palm, fighting the urge to reach for it. She had been warned about that mark since childhood. Never show it. Never speak of it. Never let anyone trace its shape. Never let the moon see it uncovered when strangers were near. Old healer Nara's voice echoed in her memory. The day they see what you are, child, they will stop calling you weak. They will start calling you dangerous. Amara swallowed hard. Kael reached her. For a moment he stood close enough for her to see the faint shadows beneath his eyes, the tightness around his mouth, the strain hidden under the mask of command. His strength was real. His suffering was real too. The chamber had not lied. He seized her wrist. The hall vanished. That single touch tore through both of them. Kael's hand closed around her skin, and whatever was sleeping inside him answered with violent certainty. His wolf, the wounded beast he had hidden from the pack, rose through pain and sickness with one clear recognition: mate. The word stayed trapped inside him, unheard by the crowd, unspoken by his lips. Yet it struck through his body with enough force to stop his breath. Kael froze. His fingers tightened, then went still. Amara felt it too. A bond opening like a door neither of them had touched. Heat spread from his hand into her arm. Her knees weakened, her heart slammed against her ribs. For the first time in her life, the silence inside her was not empty. Something answered from within her blood, ancient and wild, waking as if it had only been waiting for his touch. The mark beneath her shoulder burned bright. Her hidden wolf stirred. Not fully, not enough to shift, enough to whisper through her bones that the Alpha standing before her was not only her ruler, he was hers, and she was his. The truth should have been sacred. In Moonstone Pack it was impossible. An Alpha could not be bound to an Omega. Not one like Amara, not a servant without rank, not a girl accused before the council, not a woman with no visible wolf and no noble family to defend her. Kael was expected to accept Isolde, join two powerful bloodlines, satisfy the elders, strengthen his rule, and give the pack a Luna they could proudly display. A mate bond to Amara would destroy the future already arranged around him. Even worse, it would expose the weakness he had spent years hiding. Because his wolf had not answered Isolde. It had answered the Omega everyone mocked. Amara lowered her eyes quickly, not from shame, from fear. A faint silver glow had begun to move beneath the skin of her wrist where Kael touched her. It spread like moonlight through water, thin and pale, visible only to someone standing close. She curled her fingers inward, trying to hide it. Her breath caught. The glow pulsed once, then again. Kael saw it. His face changed so quickly that the pack missed it. Amara did not. She saw the recognition sharpen into alarm. She saw the fear he tried to bury. She saw the question in his eyes. Not, what are you? Something closer to how can you exist? Kael released her with sudden force as if her skin had burned him. The connection snapped loose, leaving Amara cold. Every wolf in the hall watched. Kael stepped back. His voice came out hard, loud enough to reach the far walls, cold enough to satisfy those waiting for judgment. He rejected her, not gently, not privately, not with confusion. He rejected her as though the bond itself disgusted him. He made the rejection public enough to humiliate her, sharp enough to erase suspicion, cruel enough to convince the pack that nothing sacred had passed between them. An Omega like Amara could never be his mate. The hall exploded with laughter. It rose in waves, are cruel and bright, filling every corner of the chamber. The sound struck Amara from all sides. Some wolves laughed openly, some whispered with delight, some looked away, not out of mercy, out of fear that sympathy might make them targets too. Isolde smiled. Elder Varric leaned forward slightly. Old healer Nara closed her eyes. Amara stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by wolves who thought they had just watched her place restored. They had no idea they had just witnessed the first sign of their undoing. Her eyes filled with tears, yet she held herself upright. There are moments when humiliation crushes a person. There are other moments when humiliation uncovers what pain has been hiding. Amara did not understand what was happening to her. She did not know why her blood glowed. She did not know why Kael's touch had awakened a voice inside her. She did not know why the old healer looked as if the past had risen from a grave. She only knew that the Alpha had felt what she felt and denied it before everyone. The rejection wounded her, the laughter marked her. The silver light continued to spread. Under her sleeve, it traveled along her wrist in thin, glowing lines. She pressed her arm against her body, praying no one saw. Her breath shook. Her skin burned. The mark beneath her shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat. Kael saw enough to fear it. Nara saw enough to know the hiding was almost over. Varric saw enough to confirm what he had suspected for years. That was the danger of that night. Not the accusation, not the rejection, not the laughter of the pack. The real danger was that Amara had finally been touched by the one wolf powerful enough to wake her blood. For 15 years, Moonstone Pack had survived on a lie. They told their children the silver-blooded Omegas were cursed. They told their warriors those sacred wolves had betrayed the Alpha line. They told their servants never to ask about the massacre that stained the northern forest red under a full moon. They told Amara she was weak because a weak girl is easier to control than a powerful one who does not yet know her name. Now, inside the Grand Hall, surrounded by enemies who did not know they were enemies yet, the lie trembled. Kael turned away from her as if ending the matter. The pack took his cruelty as truth. The elders took his rejection as victory. Isolde took his words as protection of her place. Amara took them as a wound she would carry long after the laughter faded. Yet beneath all of it, another voice rose inside her. Low, unfamiliar, ancient, her wolf. It did not cry, it did not beg. It gave one warning, clear enough to chill her blood. Run. Not because Amara was powerless, not because the pack had won. Because the moment her silver blood awakened, every hidden enemy in Moonstone Pack would begin moving toward her. The Alpha had rejected her in public. The Council had seen what she tried to hide. The healer already knew the old stories were returning. And somewhere inside the walls of that mansion, the truth of the Silver Night massacre had begun to breathe again. Amara entered the hall as an accused Omega. She would leave it as a secret the pack could no longer safely ignore. And by the time the blood moon rose, every wolf who laughed at her would remember the exact moment they should have been afraid. The Moonstone Pack did not become powerful because its wolves were kind. It became powerful because every child born under its banner was taught that weakness was a disease, obedience was survival, and bloodline mattered more than the beating heart inside a person's chest. Long before Amara stood humiliated in the Grand Hall, long before Alpha Kael's wolf whispered the word that neither of them was ready to face, the Moonstone Pack had already built a world where someone like her was never meant to rise. Its territory stretched across the northern forest like a kingdom carved from stone, moonlight, and old fear. At the center of it stood the Alpha Mansion, a vast ancestral estate with towering windows, carved doors, silver gates, and long corridors that seemed to remember every footstep that had passed through them. The mansion was not merely a home, it was a symbol. It told every wolf who entered that power lived here, that history lived here, that the Alpha line had ruled before their grandparents were born and expected to rule long after their bones returned to the earth. Around the mansion were training yards where young warriors learned to fight before they learned tenderness. There were healing rooms where pain was treated quickly and silence was expected. There were council chambers where elders shaped the future of the pack with careful words and colder decisions. There were servants' halls tucked away beneath the polished floors where Omegas moved like shadows, keeping the great house alive without ever being seen as part of its glory. Moonstone Pack was old, older than the current Alpha, older than the council, older than the laws that now governed every mating, every ceremony, every punishment, every birthright. Its ancestors once believed that every wolf carried a purpose. The warrior protected, the healer restored, the hunter fed, the seer warned. The Omega balanced the heart of the pack when pride threatened to turn strength into cruelty. That was the old belief. By the time Amara was old enough to understand the world around her, that belief had been buried beneath rank, fear, and rules written by wolves who benefited from making others small. In Moonstone Pack, alphas married for strength. No alpha was expected to follow only the pull of the heart. Love was permitted when it served power. Desire was tolerated when it did not threaten order. A mate bond was respected only if the council could approve it, bless it, and turn it into something useful for the future of the throne. Aluna was not simply loved, she was chosen. Chosen by lineage. And chosen by alliance, chosen by the elders, chosen by what her family could offer, what her blood could strengthen, what her presence could prove to rival packs watching from beyond the borders. Isolde fit that world perfectly. She came from a respected bloodline. Her wolf had shifted early. Her family had warriors under their name. She knew how to smile in public and wound in private. She had been raised to understand that affection was less important than position, and position was worth protecting with whatever tools a woman had been given. Amara did not fit that world at all. She had no family standing behind her, no warrior brother, no noble mother, no father whose name could silence a room, no visible wolf, no proof of strength, no place at the high table, no future that the council considered worth discussing. Her life in the Alpha Mansion had begun so early that many of the younger servants forgot she had not been born there. To them, Amara had always been part of the walls, part of the routine, part of the quiet labor that kept powerful people comfortable. She woke before dawn, often before the first horn sounded from the training grounds. She helped wash the ceremonial robes worn by elders during moon rites. She folded cloth with careful hands because a wrinkle in a noble's sleeve could earn an omega hours of punishment. She prepared bundles of herbs for wounded warriors, crushing moonleaf, binding fever root, drying black sage above the kitchen hearth. She polished the long table in the Alpha Hall until the wood reflected candlelight. She cleaned ash from ritual bowls after ceremonies she was never allowed to understand. She knew the mansion better than most of the wolves who owned it. She knew which corridor carried sound from the council chamber when the doors were not fully sealed. She knew which guard drank too much after patrol. She knew which noblewomen smiled at one another during feasts and traded insults the moment they turned away. She knew which servants cried quietly in the linen room after being blamed for mistakes they did not make. Most importantly, she knew how to become invisible. That was the first skill every Omega learned. Not healing, not cooking, not serving. Invisibility. Keep your eyes lowered. Do not answer unless spoken to. Do not stand too close to wolves of higher rank. Do not laugh loudly. Do not look curious. Do not ask why the elders enter the sealed archive during the dark moon. Do not ask why the Alpha's mother sometimes visits the old northern shrine alone. Do not ask why old healer Nara keeps certain herbs locked in a cabinet marked only with a silver crescent. Do not ask why the story of the Silver Night Massacre changes depending on who tells it. Amara learned all of those lessons. She learned them not because she was foolish, but because survival had a language, and in the mansion, that language was silence. The pack believed she was wolfless because she had never shifted. Among wolves, that belief was almost a sentence. Children born into Moonstone Pack were watched closely as they grew. Their first signs of wolf strength were recorded, praised, compared, and whispered about by families eager to predict future power. A child who growled early was called promising. A child whose eyes flashed before the age of 10 was celebrated. A child who shifted at 14 was considered blessed. Amara passed each age without changing. No claws, no fangs, no first howl, no wolf eyes glowing in anger, no sudden burst of speed, no sign that an inner wolf had ever stirred. By 15, the whispers had hardened. By 16, they had become a label. Wolfless. The word followed her like a stain. Wolves said it when she passed. And servants repeated it with pity when they thought she could not hear. Young warriors used it as an insult when they wanted to amuse one another. Noble girls said it delicately, as if cruelty became polite when spoken softly. Wolfless Amara, weak Amara, silent Amara, the Omega whose wolf never came. No one knew that sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, Amara woke with the taste of iron in her mouth and moonlight burning behind her closed eyes. No one knew that when she stood too close to silver flame, her skin tingled as if something under it wanted to answer. No one knew that animals in the forest never ran from her. Even wild things watched her with strange stillness, as though they recognized a name she had never been taught. No one knew that every full moon— No, the mark beneath her shoulder warmed until she had to press a cloth against it and bite her lip to keep from making a sound. The pack believed she was empty. Amara feared she was not. That fear had begun long before she understood it. Her earliest memories did not come in order. They came in fragments, like broken pieces of a mirror buried under ash. A forest floor cold beneath her cheek. The smell of smoke. A woman's hand pressing something soft around her shoulders. A flash of silver cloth stained red. Men shouting in the distance. Wolves running. A voice telling her not to cry. A face she could never fully see. Only dark hair, warm hands, and eyes filled with a kind of love that felt urgent, almost desperate. Then silence. After that, Nara. Old healer. Nara had found her in the northern forest after the massacre. At least that was the story Amara had been allowed to know. Nara had carried her back through secret paths, hidden her beneath a healer's cloak, and told the council that she had found a lost Omega child near the border. Amara had been too young to remember the questions that followed. She had no memory of Elder Varric looking down at her with careful interest, no memory of Mother Luna Seraphine standing behind him, pale and silent. No memory of Nara gripping the child so tightly that her fingers left marks on Amara's small arm. No memory of the council deciding that a harmless Omega child could be kept alive if her origins remained unspoken. The official record gave Amara no family name, only Amara, an orphan found after rogue violence, an Omega child taken in by pack mercy. Mercy. That word was used often in Moonstone Pack when powerful wolves wanted gratitude from those they had already broken. As Amara grew, Nara became the closest thing she had to family. The old healer was stern, sharp-tongued, and rarely soft in public. She corrected Amara quickly when others were watching. She assigned her exhausting tasks. She scolded her for carelessness. She never allowed anyone to accuse her of favoritism. Yet in private, Nara's hands were gentle. She taught Amara which herbs soothed fever and which ones could slow bleeding. She taught her how to listen to a patient's breathing, how to clean wounds, how to make tea strong enough to calm trembling nerves without dulling the mind. She taught her that fear should be respected, not worshipped. She taught her that silence could keep a person alive, although it could never set them free. And she taught her one rule above all others: never reveal the mark. The mark lay beneath Amara's left shoulder, close to her collarbone, shaped like a crescent moon pierced by 3 thin lines. It was not a tattoo. It had not been cut into her skin. It had been there as long as she could remember, pale most days, almost invisible unless the moon was full. When Amara was a child, she once asked if all Omegas had marks like hers. Nara's face changed so sharply that Amara never forgot it. The healer shut the door, covered the window, and knelt in front of her. Her voice became low, not angry, not gentle, something heavier than both. She told Amara that some marks were not decorations, some marks were histories, some marks were invitations for wolves who knew how to read them, some marks could get a child killed if shown to the wrong eyes. From that day, Amara never asked again. She covered the mark even in summer heat. She changed clothes alone. She bathed after everyone else had left the washing room. If another servant came too close while she dressed, she turned away quickly. Over time, hiding the mark became as natural as breathing. Yet hiding a thing does not make it disappear. The older Amara became, the more the mark seemed to live. It warmed when Alpha Kael passed through the lower corridors, although she had never understood why. It ached during council ceremonies. It stung when Elder Varric stood too close. It pulsed whenever Isolde wore moonstone jewelry around her throat, as though the stone recognized something under Amara's skin and answered with warning. The first time it glowed, Amara was 17. She had been alone in the healing room, grinding herbs after midnight, when a wounded warrior was brought in from the border. He had been attacked, they said. By rogues. His breathing was shallow. His blood had darkened around the wound. The healers moved quickly, yet nothing stopped the poison spreading through his veins. Amara stood near the shelves, holding a bowl of crushed moonleaf, unnoticed by everyone. Then the dying warrior looked at her. Not at Nara, not at the senior healer, at Amara. His lips moved around one word: silver. The bowl slipped from her hands and shattered. Every healer turned. Nara moved faster than anyone else. She grabbed Amara by the arm, pulled her into the storage alcove, and covered the mark beneath her shoulder with trembling hands. That was the night Amara realized Nara was not merely protecting her from mockery, she was protecting her from recognition. The Silver Night Massacre was the one story Moonstone Pack never told the same way twice. And children heard the simple version first. Years ago, rogue wolves crossed the northern border during a full moon. They attacked a small settlement loyal to Moonstone Pack. Many were killed. The Alpha line mourned. The council hunted the rogues. The pack survived. That was the version told at training fires. Servants heard another version. The settlement had not been ordinary. Its people had carried strange blood. Their wolves were weak in battle but dangerous in ritual. Some said they had betrayed the Alpha line. Some said they had tried to use forbidden moon magic. Some said the massacre was tragic, yet necessary. That was the version whispered in kitchens. Elders told a different version when they thought no young ears were near. The silver-blooded Omegas had grown too influential. Alphas once sought their counsel. A Lunas feared their judgment. Their blood could expose curses, reveal broken bonds, heal poisoned wolves, and reject unworthy rulers. A pack that depended on them could never be fully controlled by council law. That version was never spoken loudly. Amara did not know which version was true. She only knew the story always ended the same way. The silver-blooded Omegas were gone, all of them, except the child found in the forest. Except the girl wrapped in a blood-stained silver cloak. Except Amara. The cloak itself had vanished years ago. Nara told her it had been burned to protect her. Amara believed her because she wanted to believe the old healer never lied. Yet even that answer carried weight. Why would a piece of cloth be dangerous? Why would a child's blanket need to be destroyed? Why did Nara's eyes fill with grief whenever the northern forest was mentioned? As Amara moved through the mansion day after day, the past moved beside her. She washed robes for elders who might have known her parents. She served meals to warriors whose fathers might have marched on the Silver Night. She cleaned the Alpha Hall where decisions about her bloodline may have been made before she was old enough to speak. She bowed to the very system that had turned her survival into a secret. That was the quiet cruelty of Moonstone Pack. It did not only punish its enemies, it made them serve the table where their names had been erased. Still, Amara endured. She did not endure because she lacked pride. She endured because pride without power could become a grave. She endured because Nara told her that staying alive was not cowardice. She endured because some part of her, buried deep beneath fear and obedience, seemed to be waiting for a moment she could not yet see. That moment began with Alpha Kael. For most of her life, Amara had known Kael only from a distance. As a boy, he had been serious long before he became Alpha. Other young wolves trained to impress. Kael trained as if failure had teeth. After his father's death, he grew colder. He stopped laughing in public. He learned council language. He learned war strategy. He learned how to look at people without allowing them to know what he felt. The pack admired him for it. They said he was disciplined. They said he was born to rule. They said Moonstone Pack was safe under a leader who did not let emotion guide him. Amara saw what others ignored. She saw the way his hand sometimes tightened near his ribs after a full moon. She saw how the healers carried covered trays into his private wing at strange hours. She saw Nara's face darken whenever Kael's name was mentioned with the word blessing. She saw Mother Luna Seraphine watching her son during ceremonies with the fear of someone counting days. The pack called him strong because they needed him to be strong. Amara suspected strength was not the whole story. The first time she heard his wolf cry, everything Nara had hidden began to move toward the surface. It was not only pity that made her open the chamber door, it was recognition. Her blood knew his pain before her mind understood it. That was why the public rejection mattered so much. It was not only a cruel sentence spoken before the pack, it was the collision of every law Moonstone Pack had used to keep itself intact. An Alpha trained to marry strength had touched an Omega taught to hide power. A dying wolf had recognized the one bloodline forbidden to return. A girl believed to be wolfless had awakened under the hand of the one man whose survival might depend on her. And the pack had laughed. They laughed because they did not know history had entered the hall through the lowest door. They laughed because they believed rank could protect them from truth. They laughed because Amara's tears looked easier to understand than the silver light beneath her skin. After Kael rejected her, the mansion did not return to normal. It pretended to. That was what powerful houses did after violence. They polished the floor, relit the candles, corrected the servants, and called the damage order. Amara was sent back to the lower wing before the gathering ended. 2 guards escorted her through the corridor. Not because she was dangerous in their eyes, but because humiliation needed a final shape. Servants stepped aside as she passed. Some looked at her with pity, some avoided her gaze, a few whispered as soon as she moved beyond them. She kept her wounded hand hidden in her sleeve. The silver glow had faded, but the burning remained. Nara found her before she reached the servants' quarters. The old healer did not embrace her, not there, not where walls could carry secrets. She only took one look at Amara's face, then at the covered wrist, and turned sharply toward the healing rooms. Amara followed. Inside the small herb chamber, Nara locked the door. Only then did the healer's control break. She pulled Amara's sleeve back and stared at the faint silver lines still visible beneath the skin. For several seconds, she said nothing. Her silence frightened Amara more than shouting would have. The mark beneath Amara's shoulder throbbed. Nara touched it with 2 fingers, careful, almost reverent. The mark answered with a pale glow. The old healer closed her eyes. What she had feared for years had finally begun, not because Amara had disobeyed, not because she had entered the Alpha's chamber, because Kael had touched her, because the bond had recognized her, because the buried bloodline had awakened before the blood moon. Nara told Amara to listen carefully. There were truths that could not be learned slowly anymore. The pack had already seen too much. Kael had seen enough. Varric, if he was watching as closely as Nara feared, had seen more than enough. Amara wanted answers. She wanted to know why her skin glowed. She wanted to know why the Alpha's touch felt like fire and home at the same time. She wanted to know why her wolf, silent all her life, had suddenly warned her to run. Nara did not answer everything. Fear made her selective. Instead, she repeated the oldest warning: never let them take your blood, not a vial, not a drop, not for healing, not for ceremony, not for proof. Amara stared at her, shaken, because until that night she had thought the mark was the secret. The true danger was inside her veins. Outside the healing room, the mansion continued its ceremonies. Nobles spoke in lowered voices, warriors returned to their posts. Isolde accepted comfort from women eager to flatter the future Luna. Elder Varric sat in council silence, thinking. Mother Luna Seraphine retreated to her private chamber and ordered that no one disturb her. Alpha Kael returned to his wing. He did not sleep. The mark of Amara's wrist remained on his palm, faint and silver as if her skin had branded him. He washed his hand twice. The mark did not leave. His wolf, weak for months, had risen at her touch with more strength than it had shown in weeks. That should have relieved him. It terrified him, because Kael had been raised on the same laws as everyone else. He knew what the council said about forbidden bonds. He knew what would happen if the pack believed an Omega had awakened his wolf. He knew Isolde's family would see insult. He knew the elders would see danger. Most of all, he knew the legends of silver-blooded Omegas were supposed to be dead. Legends, when they return, do not ask permission. They demand payment. That night, while Amara sat in Nara's locked herb chamber with her wrist wrapped in healing cloth, 3 separate forces began moving through Moonstone Pack. Kael began searching for the truth of the bond. Isolde began watching Amara with hatred sharpened by fear. Elder Varric began preparing for the blood moon. And Amara, the girl they called Wolfless, finally understood that being weak had never been her true danger. Being found was. The story of the Silver Night Massacre had followed her all her life, like smoke from a fire no one allowed her to see. Now the smoke was clearing. Questions rose one after another, each more dangerous than the last. Who truly killed Amara's family? Why had the elders blamed rogues if the truth was already known inside the council chamber? Why had Nara risked everything to keep one child alive? Why did Mother Luna Seraphine look afraid whenever silver blood was mentioned? And what was the mark beneath Amara's shoulder really meant to awaken? The pack believed the past was buried in the northern forest. They believed the dead had no voice. They believed one quiet Omega could be humiliated, dismissed, and returned to service like nothing had changed. They were wrong. The past had survived. It had grown up inside their mansion. It had learned their corridors, washed their robes, served their meals, listened to their lies, and lowered its eyes until the night the Alpha's touch called it by name. Amara was no longer only hiding from the pack. The pack was now hiding from what Amara might remember. And under the coming blood moon, memory would become more dangerous than any wolf at the border. Do subscribe for more stories on Forbidden Bonds.